We have Derek Chivers, apologies, and you head up A-level music?
Yeah, I'm principal examiner for composition I'm principal examiner for composition for Pearson A-level music.
Thanks, Derek. And if you want to pass the floor, you can introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Lloyd Russell. I'm Chief Examiner for Music Technology A-level. Pearson, yeah.
Hiya, I'm Francesca Christmas and I'm Director of Music and Director of Music Publishing at Trinity College London.
I'm Sandra Allen. I'm Head of Curriculum for all of the Creative Arts at AQA.
So an illustrious panel, thank you all so much for coming. I consider it illustrious. So you know what we've been talking about. I know not everyone's been able to be here all day. You know the things that are at stake, and we shared these questions in advance. So the first one, if you don't mind going first, Sandra, to what extent would you say that AQA extends its offer to four things: classical music, traditional pop and rock, jazz, and I've put it in quotes, electronically generated contemporary music, by which I'm talking about EDM, hip-hop, grime, and so forth.
So our qualifications for GCSE, same as Pearson, 60% is non-exam assessment, 30% is composing, and 30% is performing, where students really have free reign. So they can do DJ, they can do production, vocal and traditional instruments and non-traditional instruments. And then we go to our 40% written assessment, off-call requirement that there is unfamiliar listening, and then that we have 4 area studies, which is an off-call requirement, there are a minimum of 4. And we have popular music, compulsory Western classical, popular music, traditional music, and later Western classical, which, to be fair, all students pretty much do popular music, and obviously compulsory. A-level has exactly the same structure, apart from there are 7 area studies, so more choice, musical theatre, etc.
Thanks, so quite a breadth of coverage.
Quite a breadth of coverage. So a lot there, what we find, and this is very similar with music and any of the arts, where you've got the 60% non-exam assessment, we're not sort of telling teachers or students what they have to do. They have really got free choice, so there's a lot being led by the teachers and there's a lot being driven by the students, so that's quite an interesting balance.
That's very nice, thank you, Sandra. I'm sorry about the noise outside, but I think we can all hear okay, I hope. Francesca, with Trinity, but I don't know what your thoughts are about those 4 areas: classical music, traditional pop and rock, jazz, electronically generated popular music. Would you say you have much coverage across that?
So Trinity offers primarily instrumental exams on the music side, and you probably know what graded exams are. They've been around for a long, long time, and you know, to some extent haven't changed much in 150 years. Certainly in their what they assess, how they assess it. When we look at the kind of what we might call Western classical qualifications, it's often a very atomised approach to assessment where we're looking at individual skills. We do have contemporary pop music qualifications, but again, it's sitting in that graded exam structure. So I'm gonna kind of start with a different spin on it than I might talk to normally, which is, yes, we do cover different musical styles and genres, but in terms of the sort of the construct of what we do, I would say the graded exams for all of the boards are very Western classical in their pedagogical approach. So for me, there's a really, I've followed a lot of the outputs of this network for a long time, and one of the things I'm really interested in is actually how do the pedagogies and practices of different musical styles and genres impact on or define how it is taught, and therefore how it should be, or if it should be assessed. So my personal view on it is, our financial controller may take exception to this, but my personal view of this is that you shouldn't just pour in a DJ qualification to a Western classical graded exam structure. You should be thinking about how those musics are engaged with, how they're learned, how they're developed, and therefore, if you're going to assess it, how do you assess it? So, I've sort of answered a different question, but I hope that works okay.
I think it partly answers, thank you. We'll try and keep things a little bit more fluid, I think, in this session. Floyd requested that, so we'll pass over to you now, Floyd. So I will in a second invite any comments from the room, but if you'd like to give your thoughts on this matter.
Yeah, so for me personally, so Derek will talk about music A-level in a minute. I don't know very much about GCSE music, that's more what you just described, Sandra, isn't it? So that's the same as the Pearson offering. So I'm Chief Examiner for Music Technology A-level, and this came out in the 90s from Music A-level. So back in the 90s, as part of Music A-level, you could take Music Technology options. So I've heard a lot of people today saying when they were at school, it was all really boring and classical, and that was like that for me when I was at school. But then gradually it's sort of trying to edge out Music A-level, and now, since 2018, there's no music theory at all needed to do Music Technology A-level, because for many years we were sharing subject criteria. This was not a qual thing or a DFE thing, the subject criteria that you were alluding to with your classical in your GCSE music still. Yeah. So until 2018, we still had to include words like adagio when we were talking about what EQ you're going to put on a vocalist or something like that. We still had to use classical terms. It is part of the DFE subject criteria. But then as a stroke of luck, the DFE wanted to scrap some A-levels when there were syllabus changes in 2018, because if they had subject overlap, they wanted to scrap those ones. So I think like film studies and media studies overlap, so I think it's a bit like that. So for music and music technology, they wanted to scrap music technology because it had the word music in it. So they didn't want two A-levels with the same name pretty much, even though our A-level is probably more physics than it is music. But that's just, anyway, that's what the DFE thought. But luckily, that's quite a stroke of luck, because we had to take all the music theory out of our music technology A-level. So then we could write our own subject criteria. So we had complete control over what was in the syllabus for the first time. Because up until 2018, it was dictated by traditional A-level music. So it's a bit like what you're saying, Francesca, about you didn't want to make your DJing qualifications like a violin one. So that's something we just had to live with until 2018, but now we've got the A-level where I wanted it, and it's great. But yeah, in terms of genre, I can't remember what the question was, genres, so there's no classical music and music technology A-level at all. So there's a composition unit, so you have to compose a recording unit, so you record it. You can record in any style pretty much, as long as it's kind of a basic pop music style. And the composition, it can be in any style at all, apart from it has to have music technology as the core of the composition, otherwise it doesn't hit, you have to have synthesis, sampling, and creative effects in it. Sorry, am I going on too long?
No, it's all right. But I think, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, I just think it's worth sort of mentioning that for all examples, we just give a little bit of context that when qualification is created, the Department of Education put out a consultation that everybody should be back into. And then when that consultation is finalised, all of the examiners have to abide by those rules to become accredited. That accreditation process is painful.
Yeah.
I think I aged, we probably all just in this way, but it's really...
It was 2018 the last one, wasn't it?
2018, and where we're at the moment is qualification would normally last around 5 years, so we're actually all due a reform. But with COVID and general election, they have said, or have stated, and the Department of Education, that's on hold for now, unless there's a need. And I think it's really important, particularly with music, that if we do feel there is a need for reform, everybody's voice to the Department of Education is really important right now. It just happened with modern foreign languages, that collectively they called for a reform, and it did happen. So just wanted to add a little bit of context within sort of our guidelines as GCSEs and A-levels.
Yeah, what's interesting about our A-level for music technology is we've got different guidelines to music now, so we've now separated out.
Yeah, which is quite good, we should be on the sole board.
Yeah, we're the only exam board that offer music technology. but your Pearson A-level music has to be the same roughly as yours. Whereas because, so you've got the same subject criteria.
There's a lot of overlap, although the GCSEs are quite different, where we have separate marking criteria for DJing and production. We focused heavily on the DJing side, which I'm not sure. Sorry, I don't know the specification.
Really just to not to duplicate anything that Sarah said, but broadly, because we are on the same off-qual rules, as it were, we have the same structure. We have 60% coursework, 30% performance, 30% composition, and then there's a 40% of use of appraising and listening and things like that. And as far as welcoming different styles, all styles are welcome and examined through both the composition and the performance course that people do. And in fact, one of the paper that I deal with at A-level for the last 4 or 5 years, since 2018, has actually included a remix paper as well. So there's an option there that the students are provided with a vocal sample and just told to produce a piece based on it. And they go away and they chop it up and they do all kinds of things which I don't really understand, but they do it beautifully, and we've got some lovely stuff through that kind of thing. So it's a struggle I was saying to people earlier, it's a struggle to cope with the width of expression in music that we want to allow in at A-level music, but we really do try to be as wide and welcoming and inclusive as possible. I'm not saying we always succeed, because a lot of what we do is governed by the assessment criteria, which off-qual land on us and tell us you will use these words, and therefore that's what we have to do.
The picture's starting to emerge there, I would say, around government restrictions on qual, DFE, and that's one of the reasons why I don't think you guys should be treated too harshly because you're working within restrictions which you didn't choose. That's part of, I think, what's been.
We were very vocal. The examples were very vocal at the last reform, as well as obviously the community. So we get the opportunity to feed back into their guidelines how much they listen, and how much that they, there was compatible, compulsory. There was no movement on that. They were just.
Thanks.
As I said, luckily, for music technology A-level, we broke away from music so we could write our own subject content, and it was all technical. But we another thing that kind of happens, if you take the standard A-level or GCSE, you've got all the traditional kind of stuff in it. Because something that Pearson were looking into a couple of years ago was to kind of modernise the GCSE and put a music technology pathway. But the problem with that is because you've got all this compulsory classical music reading, music theory stuff in there, they were adding more content that the students had to learn. So they still had to learn the standard stuff that was already in the music GCSE, but then instead of taking some of that material out and then replacing it with music technology content, it had to be added on, so it would have made the GCSE bigger. And that was a problem. So that was luckily, as I said, for us, the music technology A-level, we removed a lot of the classical music theory stuff that we were tied to from the subject criteria Sandra was talking about, and then we replaced it with physics content. So that made it much more relevant, because that's what the universities wanted. They wanted a bit of physics in there, they wanted a bit of computer knowledge, they wanted technical numeracy, that kind of stuff. So that's what we replaced it with, and that was really successful, and the kids loved it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You keep that, Floyd. I'm getting loads of questions coming to my mind, but I'm going to invite some questions. Firstly, Jim, and then if you would pass it to the gentleman behind.
Yeah, sorry for shouting out. It is something I'm really passionate about. I set up my non-profit, and one of the key aims is to have kids' work in DJing and music production recognised at the same level as every other instrument. Right, the disparity is unfair. I understand now, and I didn't before, that you are mediators on our behalf to the powers that be, which is Ofqual. But how can we help? You talk about forcing another review of the specification. What can we do, and how can our voices help you?
Contacting the Department of Education Ofqual as much as possible, getting the voice across. Obviously, for me, we've just seen, for those that don't know, there's a new model music curriculum leading up to GCSEs. It is better, it is much better, there's a lot more support. It drops off right till we get to GCSE. We've also got the fact that we've got EBAC to challenge against, as we all know, what that has done to the arts in general. The only thing I would say with the general election next year, I am not sure how successful anybody's going to be. I think modern foreign languages, just so that, again, a reform, they'll announce a reform. What will happen is, like I said, there'll be the consultation, and then the examiners will have around about a year to reform that qualification. So we've just finished and had accredited our new modern foreign languages, first teaching 2026. So you're always thinking sort of, if we can get reform now, it would be 27. It just takes a little bit longer than you would hope. We do look at trying to change things, so if there was something that we wanted to change in our qualification, we're very happy that we've got the DJ in there, and we've got barriers to that, which I know will come up in some of the later questions. We can make tweaks, but the fundamental list of what has to be in that will never be able to change until reform happens. So that's sort of, you know, can we be a little to look at what that content is, what can we do with the current qualification, and how we can tweak that. So that's possibly a mix-up, but as I said, it would be going to the Department of Education. It would be going to the Department.
I'd love to help.
If you hold the mic slightly away, somebody's commenting on mic.
That's all right, we just talk now because we're passionate.
I know as well.
So, I've grabbed the mic off you. Yeah, so what you need to do is, back in 2018, when the last reform was, there was an open, that's what you were alluding to, there's an open consultation where all the stakeholders can put their oar in and say what they want to happen in GCSEs and A-levels. And it's normally focused towards teachers in schools, because they're the main stakeholders, and universities as well, because they're the ones that have to deal with the kids that actually end up at university, so they're the main people that are involved. But people like yourselves, the consultation will be publicised on Ofqual, you can just fill in a form and just say what you want. And they collect all these voices, and then that does make a difference. It made a massive difference with our A-level, the music technology A-level, because we were able to decouple from music A-level, and that was really important for us. Yeah, that'd be like, when did the graduation happen? But we don't really know when that's going to be. But for me personally, my exams only run twice because of COVID. It had 3 years off in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, no, my question follows on a little bit from that. There's a lot of narrative about GCSE in A-level, especially coming out from organisations like ISM. And the dropping numbers around that. I think it partially tells the story. I think there are other qualifications are available. You know, I'm thinking about the work with Trinity Rock and Pop work, about RSL, about the changes into T-cells, into T-levels, and the work that's going on there. You know, there is quite a rich, and if we look at some of the stats, there's been an uptick in the increase of young people taking music qualifications on one side, and then a very negative narrative about school and the threat and the loss and the percentage decrease of GCSE and A-level and so on. And I don't think any of the information is very helpful for the wider sector around that. But there's just something, and I don't know whether young people know this or not, what the range of qualifications there are and the different pathways, and especially when it brings back to your point around urban musics, and then, you know, what are the pathways to do that?
I do happen to know that there's a BTEC, and there are lots of BTEC qualifications in music, and I do know that there's at least there is a 60-hour unit at least, I'm not even sure it's not even a full qualification, in DJing that I think there's some do. I found it on the website the other day. Or is it OCR? Yeah. And you know, there are lots of things there, and I think one of the great virtues of those, without wishing to do my own area of the world down, is that of course it enables people to just do what they really love. And I think one of the problems about this sort of widening of the whole music curriculum that we've got is that if we're expecting someone who's really, really into the DJing or into rapping or into EDM or whatever it is, if we're then expecting them to also analyse this, harmonise a Bach chorale, do this and do, you know, I used to say to my students when I taught A-level music for 35 years, I used to say, you know, this is the Heineken of A-level subjects. It reaches every part of your body. There are so many different skills involved in doing any kind of music qualification. And if I think sometimes maybe we're expecting too much of the students, and by reference to one of Pete's possibly later questions, we're also expecting the teachers to do much. We're expecting the teachers to be experts in every single style of music, to be able to encourage their students to do every style of music. It's just not realistic.
It's a very good point. And but I'll invite Fred to have something.
Yeah, just one little thing carrying on with what you said, Derek. It's something that someone said earlier, I can't remember which speaker it was now, that most music teachers in schools are by themselves. So they have the expertise of one person. And so, you know, there might be a music teacher who knows lots about, you know, Mozart's violin concertos or something like that, but knows nothing about DJing or vice versa. And then how they expected to teach this broad curriculum that you've just been talking about. And that's a lot of pressure to put on the teacher who's by themselves.
People who are trying to teach people to use sequencers, DAWs, things like that, who weren't educated to do that. You just picked it up on the fly. When I started using computers in music, they were BBC B computers with a cassette player. Sorry, translate that for the younger people. It was a sort of tape thing.
Can I just add to that though? And there are some real positives out there, but there is a lot of onus on the teachers. So we have a fantastic example of a school in York. They had 8 students. They were told the music department was going to be shut down. They contacted me. They got involved in a lot of technology, into DJing, and they ran some workshops. The teacher absolutely invested their time into understanding DJ. They have now had, for 3 years, a cohort of 100 students. And that's where we need to work together to sort of to help the teachers, because the students, kids could hear they could do DJ, they loved it. You know, that was, but the teachers are nervous.
Just to respond to Phil's question, because you raised a really good point, Phil. There's a different sort of, we're talking about different types of qualifications at the moment. There are the qualifications that run in the school, that are delivered by teachers, and by the very nature that they're run in school, there is access to all young people to those qualifications. If they're offered in the school, a young person can do them. And Phil has referred to some of the qualifications that are outside of school, but like the ones that we run at Trinity or that RSL run, which are often studied for outside of school, either by people learning on their own, by YouTube, by a teacher, however they learn, and it's something that they can specialise in a particular instrument or area of music making. And all of those qualifications share the same levels. So there are level 3 qualifications in those types of exams, which are a bit smaller, but the same standard as, say, something that might run in the 6th form. And actually those qualifications go right up to level 7 in some instances, which is a high-level qualification, a bit like the ones that run at music conservatoires, fellowships and licentiates, that kind of level. But I think the point that Phil makes, which is really interesting, is that the narrative around those types of qualifications get sort of subsumed in the wider narrative around school qualifications. While those qualifications have seen a shrink in their numbers since COVID, because there was a kind of to zero, and then it started to grow again. In the contemporary and the rock and pop space, the increase, the growth is extraordinary. It's much higher than anything we've ever seen across classical qualifications, Western classical qualifications. And that continues year on year on year. It can be seen in the off-qual data. And the vocational quals that perhaps aren't represented here, but are run by boards such as RSL, which do specialise in areas like music production, have really very healthy numbers, and there are a lot of children and young people that take those, and we see those numbers are increasing. So it's a kind of, I think Phil was, tell me if I'm misrepresenting you, Phil, but I think Phil's point was that while we do see this very challenging narrative about GCSE and A-level numbers falling across the sector, we are also seeing numbers in different types of qualifications, and perhaps the not Western classical musics, just to other everybody for a moment, we see those on an increase. So it's quite interesting to, I think, to look at both of those sides of the story. So have I got that right, Phil?
Thanks, Francesca. We are going to run out of time soon-ish, but I saw that you had a question. I've got something that I'm going to ask at this time.
As a past music GCSE student, I finished about last year. I did find that my course wasn't very inclusive. I love music, that's why I'm here. I'm DJing it up. I've done really well coming out of the course, but I didn't like it, to be honest. I don't really enjoy my time. Going back to your point with the teachers, for me, I felt that my teachers weren't very inclusive. They kind of stuck into the lane of classical, and when I came with new genres or music and tried to show them different styles, they weren't very open and inclusive. I know it's just my school, it might not be every school, but my question was, how do you make sure that every teacher is engaging with every single student, and how do you make sure that every school allows all genres?
Well, that's a huge question. I think I'll probably... No, I'll try. I'm sorry if what you felt you had wasn't what you felt you needed or what you wanted. And I think in terms of these things, it's really hard to design something that allows every amount of, every range of opinion, experience, background, etc. I mean, if you're talking about inclusion, you're talking about diversity. For example, just small, very small things, very small responses. When Pearson brought out its current A-level music global set works, a student who was in GCSE at the time, so would be taking that specification when it came out, she wrote in and she said, "Have you not noticed that there's not a single woman on the list of set composers and set works?" And there was a response to that, and a number of female composers, the complete list of set works was rejigged. And I think David Bowie was taken out, and Kate Bush, for example, was put in, Anushka Shankar was put in, Clara Schumann, the composer from way back, was put in there instead of a male composer. So there are responses that do go on, but as someone said earlier on, it takes time. And yeah, I absolutely agree. I always felt music teaching was a really, really difficult job when I did it. And coming here today, I mean, I feel so inadequate. My knowledge of the sort of urban music, I know we're not supposed to call it that now, but the knowledge of this sector, my knowledge of it is, I feel shamefully, bad about it. But we do need to make it as wide. And the crisis is crucial. We start in education. If we educate people to know about lots and lots of different types of music, when they become music teachers, they'll teach lots of different types of music. So I hope they'll be more open than you felt yours were.
So many difficulties facing teachers and exam boards to get this into. I know Sandra wanted to come in and then pass that to one side.
I think it's really important what we do in the community. So AQA and all the exam boards can do as much to support teachers. We need to do more. So So building communities, working with stakeholders, getting things into schools, workshops, all of that we can support. But we need the teachers to be on board. So I think there's a bit of a battle there, but I think there's a lot more we can do. So I'm the voice of teachers. That's my job for AQA, to make sure that teachers within AQA are heard. So if we get somebody contacted who wants to change something, obviously if I can, I will, and that sort of thing. But I think we're starting to sort of build a lot of connect sessions. We have an equality, diversity, inclusion group that we work together, we look at the changes. Just we need to do more of that. Okay.
Nothing else would mean we wouldn't get a question from here, probably. So should we?
Hello. So, quick question for the panel. In terms of the panel, you guys oversee GCSEs, A-levels and BTECs, is that correct? And is it only creative qualifications in the music industry?
For me personally, I just oversee music technology A-level. That's the only thing I oversee. I think Sandra oversees lots of stuff.
AQA do every, so we look after every GCSE and A-level as do Pearson's. There are 4 exam boards in the UK. My role is to look after every one of the creative GCSEs and A-levels. We don't have a big an offering on the vocational side as the BTECs, and then yours.
Yeah, in terms the reason why I ask is in terms of the content, what I'm trying to understand is, do any of these students at GCSE, A-level and BTEC level, do they do any music business related modules? There's a reason why I asked it.
I'm not an expert on BTEC, that's not what I do, but there is a BTEC, there is, yes. I do some work on it.
Yeah,
There's at level 2, there's a BTEC music industry and practice module. Yeah, it's part of the BTEC, yeah, it's a level 2 BTEC is got it in. Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you some of the questions out of last year's exam because I marked on it.
Yeah, no, the reason why I asked that is that I'm doing my PhD at the University of West London, and as part of my scholarship I have to teach, and I've got experience of teaching at ACM and 2 other universities, and when I'm dealing with creative students, I'm disturbed about the level of understanding that they have about the music industry. So when they're doing these creative qualifications, they seem to know very little about how the music industry works. So for example, I taught second level students recently on a module, and they were performance students and production students, and it was from 3 different courses, and they're all bunched in together, and they had to do a music business module, and I was concerned about how little they knew as second year BA students about the music industry. So I'm just wondering about some of these creative qualifications, like you've mentioned BTEC, it's there, but why isn't it there at GCSE at A-level, just at least one module? And you mentioned about, obviously, teachers being able to multitask, having to know about 10 different genres and different elements of why isn't it outsourced?
That goes back to the reform of the qualification code. The requirement for GCSE or A-level is 30% composing, 30% performing, 40% analysis. So you have 3 components. If you Google of GCSE subject level conditions music, and then that is what every exam will. So that's why there wouldn't be one there for a GCSE or an A-level. We wouldn't get accredited if we tried to do that.
Thanks.
So when I'm able to give them like real life scenarios, real life conversations, about stuff that goes on in the industry, why I'm teaching, it's like real relation students, I find it quite bizarre. Like you obviously said, it's to do with accreditation.
There is a course, but it's a separate course though. Pearson do run a course, a BTEC, not an A-level or a GCSE, it's a BTEC, and there are modules about music industry. So it does exist, but maybe the students that you've been working with just didn't take that particular course and they came for a different route in music.
It's a very good point. Yeah. It's a great point. Thank you for that question. And a lot of what's come out for me, just to very quickly sum up, because we're completely out of time and over time, in fact, is that there's a lot of complexity around what should go in, what shouldn't go in. Should, you know,
There's too much to go in is the problem.
Should A-level music have some technology in it? Should music tech have some music theory in its traditional sense in it? It's an awful lot of complexity, which we're never going to conquer all of this afternoon. However, I'm extremely grateful to the four of you for coming this afternoon. I'm sorry we couldn't extend the conversation, but thank you very much for coming.